All right. Good day. Um, this is actually a very amazing um part of um data analysis you need to understand. And in my last video, where I was explaining the introduction to Microsoft Office, I mentioned that Microsoft Office is actually divided into four: the Microsoft Word, the Microsoft Excel, the PowerPoint, and the OneNote. If you have not watched that video, just go back and get it. Right. It's actually, one thing about Microsoft Excel is that it's actually a very powerful app, a very powerful software for analysis. And when you have your data, you need to actually analyze. And Excel is actually a very powerful app for that. Your understanding of Excel will give you understanding when you begin to use Google Sheets. It's the same thing, just a little bit of differences. But one major thing you need to understand while working with Excel is formulas. And that's why this video is dedicated to formulas. And we're going to be working through a lot of formulas. A lot of formulas, especially the major ones, right? In this video, I'll be talking about a couple of formulas, right? Starting from the very basic ones to the intermediate, and I also do a special video for advanced formulas, so you just be able to right? So let us work with this. So basically, let me start. What is spreadsheet data analysis? It's just the process of organizing, examining, and interpreting data using tools like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. You know, one beautiful thing about this is that it's accessible, right? No coding is required. Anyone can start with it. It's versatile. It's powerful. You know, and it has visuals, right? What's very most time people used to ask like what's very between Excel and Google Sheet. For Google Sheet, Google Sheet actually works. Um, it works basically right on both mobile and web. Excel works on desktop and web, and both of them works like that basically. But one thing is for collaboration, Excel does not work real time, right? That means what I'm trying to say is that for Excel, if I'm working on an Excel document, and even though I send you the document, you cannot see what I'm doing real time. That means what I'm doing at my end won't affect what is at your end. That means Excel does not operate real time, but Google Sheets actually operate real time. That means I'm actually working on a Google Sheet document and Google Sheet, right? I'm working on Google Sheet. I'm making my analysis. If I share you my link, or that is granting you an access, you'll be able to see what I'm doing as I'm doing it. And you can also be working on the same Google Sheet, right? So both of us can be working together at different places, and that's why Google Sheet is actually a very powerful um tool also. But even for Google Sheet, even for Excel, you still need what formulas. It's just that one is real time, one is not real time, basically, right? So the formula power advanced, Google Sheet is growing. Trust me, both of them actually has formulas and all that. Google Sheet is free, Excel is paid, right? Excel is not a free app, but meanwhile you can get cracked versions of Excel if that's accessible to you. The AI features for Excel is Copilot, the app feature for Google Sheet is Gemini, and you can also integrate cloud into Excel now, which is also very good, right? Okay, role of formulas in data analytics, right? Number one use of formulas is to number one automate calculations, and that's one beautiful thing. Unlike the conventional ways of actually using formulas to I've been using calculators to calculate your stuff. Now we use formulas in Excel, and formulas is so powerful that once you are changing the data, the calculations will calculate itself. It's automate things, right? And as I said, is here formulas will calculate instantly when data changes. For example, if you are working on Microsoft Word, for example, imagine you creating a budget on Microsoft Word. One thing you are going to observe is that if you are making or altering a particular data in a budget, right, on Microsoft Word, you see that it will automatically not update, right? But if you are creating your budget, you are creating a financial statement in Excel, once you change the data, it will automatically affect the calculation, right? So it will calculate itself. That's one powerful thing using formula. When it summarize data set, you have a data set, 1,000 and column, you want to just know the total revenue, you want to know the average, you want to know the count, so you can just easily just work with it, right? So now, clean messy data, that's one beautiful thing about it. Build dashboards and stuff like that. In later videos we'll still be talking about these interesting things. What is the structure of spreadsheet formulas? you know every formula must start with an equals to sign. That's one thing you need to know. Every formula starts with an equal sign. And what does an equal sign does? It actually tells the spreadsheet to calculate. So if you actually use equals to, you're actually telling the spreadsheet that, hey, calculate for me, right? And we'll be dealing with different type of functions, some, the likes, right? And now let us just work. These are um different types of spreadsheet functions. We have the aggregation functions, we have the logical functions, we have the conditional functions, we have lookup functions, we have text functions, and we have formatting functions. Right? So in this video, I'll be touching the aggregation functions, right? I'll be making sure we work with the aggregation functions, and also let's see if we can also touch the logical. Yeah, because I want to split this video into two. There'll be a continuation of this video, so it'll not be too long, right? So, but let's work with the aggregation functions. But before we even talk about sum, right? Before we talk about sum, sum is actually for addition. So I said it here, the sum function adds up all the numeric values in a selected range, right? So let us just, let me give an example. Let us just play around with something first. You know, basically this is Excel. I've gotten back to Excel. And these are cells basically. And one thing to understand about cells is that cells are written columns before rows. I think I said that in my last video where I was trying to walk you through just the interface of Excel. Excel operates in columns before rows. Very beautiful stuff, right? So basically now, let's say in our A1, basically now, in our A1, let's say we have name, right? Now A1 we have name, and let's say here we have net worth. So let's say we have name of, one interesting thing now. Let's say we have name. I want to say um this is Michael Williams. You can see it's actually going to the next place, and so for you to adjust the width in Excel, you can just put your cursor here and drag. So that's what you can do. Or you can actually just double tap it to also adjust the width by itself, right? Um, so let's just have a couple of names. So let's say this is Victoria, right? This is Deborah, right? This Favor, right? This is okay, let's say this is Richard. You know, so net worth, we're just working with some assumed values. Let's just see this is 100, this is 200, this is 300, this is 400, this is 500. This is just some amazing stuff. And I forgot to say something. In Excel, there's actually we call your sheets. This is, for example, this is your sheet one. You can actually create a new sheet, right? I can actually change the name of the sheet. Let's say you have this. name of this sheet. We call it data, right? Let's say this is data set or something. Just name it anything you like. This is sheet two. You can create as multiple sheet you have, and this is called sheet. Why this all these Excel documents, that's containing all these sheets is called a workbook. It's called a workbook. So if we are saving this, that means we're actually saving a workbook. Can you see this is an Excel workbook? So all the sheets are in a workbook. So let me just save this as practice 101. So right, let me just go back to this, right? Okay, so very interesting stuff. Let's say we want to calculate the total net worth now. And I want to just make an explanation on this. So that when I begin to explain formulas, you just get a very good understanding. For example, if I want to add up all these net worth, I can do two things. I might say 100 plus 200 plus, can you hear, plus this, right? So if I press equals to, to actually sum everything together. But if you're having, the same thing works with division, the same thing works with multiplication. But the thing is, what if you're having hundreds of data sets? You're having hundreds of data sets and you want to do the sum. Is it that you now begin to add up individually? And that's why we begin to have formulas like sum, right? And one thing about formulas like sum is just to reduce the work you're going to be doing. So for example, let's say if I still want to do my total here now, right? But now I'm using sum, right? I'm still doing my total, but I'm using sum. So what I can actually just do is to write my equals to sum, right? And so if I'm doing equals to sum, that means I might just drag from Michael to Richard, from Michael to Richard. I might just drag and close the bracket. And don't forget, anytime you are writing your formulas, you must start with what? Equals to. Once you don't start with equals to, Excel would recognize it as a formula. It will bring out the formula. Say, do you get what I'm saying? Now, so if you write SUM, it will bring out different type of sum, but you are dealing with the normal sum, right? So if you are dealing with the normal sum, all we just need to do is that don't forget, it's just the same thing now. Instead of me dragging down, so I can go and reference the cell. And I told you that for cell referencing, you do what? Columns before row. So that means this net worth amount for Michael Williams, it is B2. So I can actually say B2 up to, so we're using up to, we're actually using this column sign, right? B2 up to B6. So we're doing B2 up to B6, then we're closing the bracket, pressing enter. You can see this is giving me the same 1.5, which is actually very amazing, right? So this is just the total, which is sum, right? So let's say, for example, to calculate our average. Our average, it's also very simple. Average is the same thing as mean, right? Average is the same thing as mean. And for you to calculate average, you do the total. For example, the total of all these divided by the numbers, right? For example, and the type of average is actually doing it is equivalent to what we call arithmetic mean in statistics, right? I know arithmetic mean, the formula is summation xi over n. That actually means what? The addition of the observation divided by the number of items. Are we together now? So now you can actually see that for the average now, if I actually press equals to average, if you just type it, you can see this is average, right? There's different type of average, but this is the average we are using. Don't forget that. So scrolling down, right? Or you can actually just write what? Just reference that's B2, whether in capital letter or small letter, it does not matter, but use capital. B2 up to B6, close the bracket, then you have your average. Our average is 300. Let's have our mean, and also we have our max. Yeah, right? So our mean is the minimum, right? In all the observation. So that's the mean. Yeah. Close the bracket. We have 100. We have our max, and right. So this is how it works. Basically, it's very simple. It's very simple. So one other thing I actually want you to know is that let's say we have our network and let's say we have our um stars. And let's say our stars is measured in numbers. Let's say this one has 2 stars, this has 4 stars, this has 5 stars, this has 8 stars, this has say well, so the idea is now let's say there's what we call NS, which actually means network stars, and NS is actually the multiplication of the network and stars. So this is just an hypothetical example now, right? So let's say network and stars and NX is network and stars. For example, if you want to multiply, there are no like functions like this. It's just that we have the sum for multiplication. Just the normal multiplication equals to the net worth multiplied. For multiplication on your keyboard, for mine is the FN and P, right? But you just find out where multiplication is on your own laptop, and this is B2 times C2, right? You can see it's multiplying. And for example, if I don't want to touch it, I can also say B2 to see highlight it, B2, right? Times C2. You can see it's doing the same thing. One beautiful thing about Excel is that we multiplied the network and stars for Michael Williams. So instead of you doing repeating the same process here and saying, okay, B2 times C2 again, no, you can do two things. Either you just click on this, it's going to show you this kind of small plus, then you drag down, right? So it will automatically be multiplying B4 times C4. It will multiplying it. Because Excel will assume that this same thing you did here is what you'll be doing down. But what if you want to make sure that um it's not working like that? And that's why I'll make another video on that where I will be talking about cell referencing, the absolute referencing, the relative referencing, and the mixed referencing. And trust me, I'm going to enjoy that. But for this, just let's stay with this. Another thing you can also do to fill up the formula down is to just double tap this. Look at what I did. When it brought out this plus, just double tap. It will automatically fill the formula. So even though you're having 1,000 rows and columns and stuff like that, it's just going to autofill it with the formulas. And with this, you had formulas filled up. So let me walk you back to my slide. And I don't want the video to be too long, so I'll just break the videos into different sections. So I'll also make another video again on formulas, right? But let me just walk you through this. The sum function has about the numeric values, and I said that in a selected range, and it's used when we're calculating totals. So that you can see, for example, this is laptop 1, 2, phone 900, tablet 600. You can see the total. You can see total is 27, right? So that's So the same thing, the average calculates the arithmetic mean. I said that already. The average calculates the arithmetic mean of a range of numbers by summing of values and dividing by the count of values. For average, the average formulas. So when you click on B2 to B4, the average is 900. Count. Okay, so I'll talk about this because I love this, right? So the difference between count and count A or count R, right? So you can see the count, and the count is an additional A like at the back, right? So what is between count and the count A? So now one thing about the count is that count deals with only numeric values in a range. It ignores text, blanks, and errors. It counts only numeric values in a range. That means if you have to put the count formula on the values that are not numeric, and numeric means like numbers basically, right? Non-numeric means like blanks, it also mean text. It will not count it, right? But counter counts all non-empty cells. So while the cells is not empty, it's going to count it. It can count numbers, it can count dates, it can count. So let's just play with it. Let's play with count and count A. So let's say we have our count. So when we do our count here, So basically, so equals to count here, right? Let's count these numeric values here. That's d2 to d6. You can see we have five. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, you know, for example, for this count A, let's do count 2. Let's see what will happen. So if I'm counting these, you can see these are non-numeric values, right? If I close the bracket, what do you think is going to give me? Who can guess? You can see it's going to give me 0. Why? Because these are not numeric values. But now if I change the formula, here and I change it to count A, what do you think is going to happen? You can see what will happen. Close bracket, you can see it counted it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But let us imagine we use count A2 for this count. What is it going to give us? According to what I explained, you can see what's going to give us. This is going to give us 5. Why? Because I told you that count A, we actually do the formula. It does the work of count, but counts can't do the work of what count A. Don't forget that, right? So this is actually very amazing stuffs we all need to know as we progress the journey as a Microsoft Excel user, right? So and don't forget. So this is what I explained here. I said count only numeric values in a range. It ignores text, blanks, and errors. While the count A actually counts all non-empty cells. Non-empty cells count everything, right? So this is actually very amazing. Okay, so this is actually a practical aggregation exercise. And let's walk through it. Let's run through it. And you know, this is west, 1000 east, 15. You can try this at your leisure time, but let me just walk you. You can see total sales B2 to B6 is 54. The average sales, you can see we use the average formula. The max sales, we use the max formula. The mean sales, we use the mean formula. And the count, we use the count formula, right? So now let's go to the if function. I'll be making another video for logical conditional logic. That's logical function. I said something at the beginning here. I said we have aggregation functions, we have logical functions. So this video is for aggregation functions. So let us stop here. In my next video, I'll be talking about the logical function. This is aggregation functions. Thank you. Subscribe if you have not. Thank you.